similar to us back in our land. Galla, I mean, it's like barbarian people, or uncivilized, uncultured. That's what it means. And still, if I fight with somebody back home and they know that I'm from Oromo, I mean, they will call me Galla, and I'll be upset about it and so on. I mean, it's going down, but we have, I mean, this is something that relates to you guys more so that you can kind of understand. And another thing that Ethiopia is famous for is the Rastafarian movement, or the reggae, the birds of reggae and all that stuff. And this is the history behind it. Why did this come is, I think, when the first emperor, when Ethiopia first tried to build an empire, the emperor and his advisors, they had to come up with some, some concrete and some tangible, how shall I put this, so that the line will be strong and there will be other successive kings coming after that, and so on and so on and so on. So his advisors made up this story saying Queen Sheba, which is supposed to be from the Empire of Ethiopia, went to Israel during the time of King Solomon just to learn how to lead her empire, how to become a good leader. She went there, and King Solomon said, okay, I'll take you and I'll teach you everything I know, but don't ever touch any of my properties. So one night, they were having dinner. He gives her spicy food and salty and so on and so on. So the idea is that she would get thirsty and she would drink this jug of water, which on it is labeled property of King Solomon. So after they dine, then she goes to bed. In the middle of the night, she wakes up. She takes out the jug and she drinks. And at the time, the king is just, keeping an eye on this. This is silly. Just, think about this story. Just because she drank that, he said, okay, you've taken something of mine. And he thought that he had, he has to force himself on her. So, they had something going on that night. So he comes home to her. and she has a baby, which is going to go back to Ethiopia and continue the line of King Solomon in the land of Ethiopia. This is the story. But a lot of people don't know that.
I remember it.
Yeah, Menelik the First. That's the name. I didn't want to say the name because I don't know if you, but yeah, Menelik the First. And so another story was that after he grew up, he went back to Israel again. King Solomon, now that he's his son, he had to take care of him, show him how to rule the country, and so on and so on. And when Menelik the First, who is the child of King Solomon, now when he's coming back, he stole the Ark of Covenant, which God made with the Israel people, and brought it to Ethiopia. This is what they're saying, but which is not true. And the reason he did that is because to avenge his mother, because King Solomon forced his way on his mother. That's why he stole the Ark of Covenant. So this what this did is it gave Menelik the First at the time, who was only in this part over here, which was called Shoah at the time, to expand his empire, to go into other areas, where the Oromo people were, and also other ethnic groups, up to the border of Sudan and so on. Just in that name. Now he had the that strong tie to King Solomon, you know, which is going to be favored by other people and so on. And from that point on, that's when, you know, the first idea of the Ethiopian Empire and so on really begins and starts to move southwards towards our land. And at the time, Cortez can tell us that what kind of, how we were living and what kind of government system we had in the Oromo land before the Ethiopian Empire started to expand southwards.
Okay, we call that system the Gada system. Go ahead.
Question?
Yeah, I'm not understanding the, like the time frame here. So you're saying what happened is in the northern part of Africa, that was just basically biblically and historically Ethiopia, considered Ethiopia.
Yeah, that's how they refer to it. When the Persians were trading with Africa and the Greeks were trading with Africa, they referred to it as Ethiopia.
What's that mean?
I think it means the land of the
Latin?
burned people, or you know,
Land of the burned.
yeah, burning faces. That's what I mean.
Okay, so that was considered Ethiopia until 1884 when they had the Berlin Conference. And okay, now, was that area under a single government or was it under different governments, different chieftains?
Which area? The northern part?
Yes.
The northern part, there was one kingdom at the time which was trading with Persia.
Okay, that was a whole kingdom.
Yeah, but it was just,
That was kingdom Aksum.
yeah, Aksum. I don't know if you heard the Aksum kingdom or the Abyssinian. But they thought it was much bigger than that.
How old was that city?
It goes back to 3,000 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so they were the ones who were trading. So then Abyssinian people went to the Berlin Conference to carve out that portion of Ethiopia.
Yeah, later on, that's what happens.
I just have a point of clarification when Menelik the first went back to Israel, did he, because you said something like it wasn't true, did he take the Ark of Covenant, did he steal the Ark of Covenant, or was that like?
According to this book here by Harold G. Marcus, The History of Ethiopia, he says clearly that that was just a story made up. And till this day, I mean, there's no concrete evidence.
Who's the author of that book?
Harold J. Marcus.
Is he Ethiopian? I mean, is he?
No, actually,
from the West? I mean,
he's not Ethiopian. He's from here at the University of Berkeley in California. So that's why I chose this book, because it's not really biased. It's not written by an Oromo or an Amhara. It was written by an outsider.
well, so you're saying that, because my understanding of the Berlin Conference is there was no African countries involved when all of Africa was annexed. It was only Western European countries. So
That's not really true, because when the British and Italy, when they came and looked at Ethiopia, they found Menelik II to be a strong power at the time in the northern part of Ethiopia. And actually we had to fight against them. Because of that, they called him to the conference table and they made some agreement with him. And he asked the southern parts, or Oromia, to be included as his empire, but they can take Somalia and Eritrea, which got its independence. So it's not really that, I mean, there was actually an African representative there when you look at it in the case of Ethiopia. I mean,
If all was said, Menelik was there, then how did the Italians begin to try to conquest Ethiopia?
oh, the Italians had Eritrea given to them.
Okay.
So this is why now Eritrea says, we are an independent nation, Actually, their history, even when it comes to numbers, is less than ours. It doesn't even go. It only goes back to 1945 and a little bit down there.
But didn't the Italians fight against Menelik?
Yeah, they did.
That's what I'm saying. So if Menelik was at the conference then, and he was given Ethiopia, then why did the Italians who were also at the conference then try to conquest Ethiopia if they had planned out who was going to have which piece of land? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, you have to understand that these plans were changing.
Okay.
You have to understand that Menelik has his own agenda of expansion, just like the Italians had their own agenda of expansion, and the British did. So
What's the name of that book?
the history of Ethiopia.
And it was, I had like a comment about that. I mean, it's, I'm not saying that, that the story is true or false or what have you. But a lot of things that are written in the West have to be handled with skepticism too. I mean, what are Western interests there? I mean, do they want to have the, make a statement that, I mean, they might want to try to refute the statement of the Christian doctrine and its origins in Ethiopia by, categorizing that as mythology. I mean, I'm just saying that could be a possible motivation. So I would think that would be something to explore too. Because, I mean, according to Western history, and how they deal with Africa, almost everything in every country, all the beliefs were myth and mystic and all that kind of stuff, according to the West. So, I don't know. That would just be something to consider.
Yeah, and if you, I don't know if you have the chance, and if you read this book, this guy, he was actually an advocate of the Ethiopian Empire, the Ethiopia as a whole. But he says when he started to see a lot of ethnic groups revolting against the central government, that he started to ask questions, and he had to edit the book over again and try to include the views from the other sides and so on. So it would be, I would advise if you want to know more.
And one last thing, that sketch, have you ever seen the sketch of the Berlin Conference, the cartoon?
No.
I guess some people call it the Great African Cake. Because like when I was, I'm just saying, that could be a point of misconception also by the West, if they're not acknowledging that there was an Ethiopian presence. Because, in that same, in the same text, they don't even acknowledge it in any way, shape, or form. And I mean, we've studied the Berlin Conference extensively and how it had an impact on Africa. And I've never heard of that mentioned. I'm not saying that it's not true. You see what I'm saying? But that's something else that.
But when you talk about the name Ethiopia, you have to realize it goes way back to the times of Persia being an empire and so on.
Yeah.
And whenever they traded with Africa, they referred to it, at least to the eastern part, as Ethiopia. And at the time, it included Sudan, some even say parts of Egypt and so on.
So do you guys believe are you Oromo?
Yeah, we are Oromo.
Do you believe it's a myth, or, what's your take on it?
What'd you say? Say that again?
Do you think it's a myth?
It's
The
a
story of Menelik going back to steal the ark?
Yeah, we believe. That makes sense too. If you want to establish an empire and you want some background on you, it would make sense to say I'm connected to King Solomon, which would, back then, you don't have a lot of educated people. Not a lot of people ask questions. So.
Are you saying that Queen Sheba never went to?
Oh, she did, but we're saying she never had a son with King Solomon.
Menelik was not.
Oh, yeah,
Solomon's
Menelik is
son.
not, yeah.
That was
Not the son of King Solomon, that's our.
refute the entire thing. Go back to, order, it's supposed to be that.
Yeah.
Effort, supposed to be. That was supposed to be, I guess, the longest running lineage over there from the ancient empires. That's interesting. It's not.
Yeah, this is, you need to look at this one yourself. Just go listen to me. But make sure you look at both sides. There are lots of books that are written by Ethiopians, and there are, some books which are written by foreigners and so on. But still, you really need to look deep into it before you make up your mind about that.
Is there, is the art visible? Is there fake art, or, is that just meant, is there art somewhere?
Are they saying that it was destroyed in this instance?
Yeah.
Happens to a lot.
What they say is they brought the art to Ethiopia. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, but I'm saying, what does that book say actually happened to it?
To the art. He just mentioned it and he moved on. He doesn't really go into details. But when I was in Ethiopia myself, we really didn't know anything about the art. But when we came here, people were asking us questions about it. They say you guys have the art and so on and so on. The two. It's kind of interesting because when we came here, this is when we realized we even had the art personally.
So like is Amhara and
Tigray.
Are they is there some type of oppression against the southern section?
Yeah, because we're the majority, we want our language to be the official language. But the Amhara, compared to us, they're not the majority, but they have their language, their culture, and everything that got to do with Amhara to be, the central focus. And they spread it to, all the remote regions and the southern part of it. So that's that's our question. Why should we let somebody else tell us what to do while we are, bigger than them in numbers? Even though they outsmarted us. They are oppressive.
And ethnically oppressive?
Yeah. It's just like here, if an Oromo and an Amhara goes to find a job, their approach is different. Just by names, we have names which are kind of, you can tell, if I tell you my name, you can tell that I'm Oromo. And if somebody else tells me their name, I can tell that they're Amhara. And if I tell my name to somebody, they kind of laugh, that God or something like that. So there is that oppression. But that's what we're trying to get rid of. We want to say we have culture, which goes way back, we have language, and we have the land and the resources, and it's time that we determine our own future.
So do you think the Ethiopian problem is similar to Nigeria, whereby we are told Europeans coming and saying Nigeria should be one, when actually there are different cultures in between that it should be one?
Yeah, I believe every culture should be given the chance to, reach its climax, develop its own language and so on. And like you said, it's possible. I think that's something that needs to be looked at. Look at this European countries. They've done their own growth, they've developed their culture, and they reach the climax, and they see there's no way to expand, so they start forming the European Union. You see, because they've already reached their climax. And in our cases, and you said the Nigerian case, a minority group or a majority group is keeping another from growing and from reaching its potential, which is not fair. It's not really fair.
You said honors, you mean
In terms of like culture, because our language is slowly going down, less and less people are speaking that language, our traditional ceremonies and so on, because they're being replaced by the Amhara. So what the Amhara is doing is just spreading their own. And if we sit down and say, okay, we just want peace and let them do their own thing, and we'll just do their own thing,
are we supposed to say?
Well, yeah, we came along with the Maharas and we just with them. See, that's the kind of thing a lot of people were not able to ask back then. That's why we didn't have this massive uprising and the change in the system. Because a lot of people were not asking that question.
You know what about those people that in Africa, in the past, there have been a lot of empires that existed before the European Spain. So when you're talking about people didn't have too much because to ask questions, they have their own empires and their own ruling parties in different areas. So they must have had people who were intelligent enough to rule those empires before the European Spain.
So do you believe also after some time a culture realizes its potential, doesn't it have the right to ask the question?
I believe that, I'm on the same track with Yasha. All I'm saying in the nutshell is that in those days, they were able leaders in those empires. Like, for example, Nigeria, they say, had more than 205 different leaders, and they have leaders in different areas. Europeans just sometimes to make it easier for them to put a puppet here to their heads. As far as Ethiopia, it's one of the oldest empires, and they do have a lot of different leaders that are not known to the West before even the Trans-Saharan trade and everything as such. I believe they are capital of the itself before the came.
Yeah, when you say Ethiopia goes to, it's like an old empire,
Mm-hmm.
you're thinking of the Ethiopia that was back then or the Ethiopia that's right now?
Back then, they had different fashions. India, they have different leaders. From Uganda, that's the one I studied.
Yeah, what we're saying is that's a misconception because the Ethiopian empire that they say went down in history to like 3,000 years was only around here.
Okay.
It never passed this state. But they
Oh,
make it.
you're saying that was what they called Ethiopia, the rest of the northern part was just Abyssinia?
Yeah, that was actually.
That was Abyssinia.
Yeah, Abyssinia and Ethiopia, they were being referred to interchangeably.
Oh,
But then in the south, didn't they have rulers? And people living there?
Yeah, we did, like you said, the Geda system, in which every part of the society is divided by age.
Okay.
And they assume positions after 8 years. The old one retires and the one lower to him takes that position and so on. That's the kind of system we have. And yeah, I agree with your point that we had rulers and also different African nations had their own rulers.
Did I hear you clearly to say that until you got here to America, you did not know or had not heard of the Ark of the Covenant, or you had been taught that it was a myth? Is that what you were saying?
I mean, if they had the chance to teach me, they would teach me it's there. But I didn't hear about it. I don't know, maybe I was in my country enough number of years, maybe that's why. Because I did my high school in Kenya from 8th grade on. Maybe that's why I missed out that part. But well, at the time when I was from 1st grade up to 7th grade, I didn't hear anything about it.
Is the Ark of the Covenant a Christian?
Yeah.
Does it have to do with maybe a religion? I'm just trying to get a feel for the significance of it. I'm just trying to get, is it generally something that, because you said Christian, Islam, and traditional were the three major religions. So would that be something that you would find in Christianity, but not Islam has no reference to it, and your traditional religion has no reference to it? Or I don't seem to be kind of understanding.
Okay, I mean, you don't have to take my word for it again. If you read the other books in this book, Islam is a majority compared to Christianity in Ethiopia. That's another thing a lot of people don't know. They think Ethiopia is 99% Christian, which is not. Islam came to Ethiopia first before Christianity, because trading with the Arabs first.
What? At this time in history, like,
I mean, look at the history overall.
right, I mean, just like when, the question of the art, being removed and not removed, at that point in history, was it the era of trading going on, or was it like a Coptic reading? Like kind of what you were saying, but like I'm trying to get a frame of time. You know what I mean? Can I make myself clear?
The time when the art was moved on.
Right, at the time when the art was moved, like what was the first time? Was it Arabic? I mean, at that point, it was a pre.
I would say Islam,
Well,
except the kingdom of Aksum itself. You know, that area here could have been Coptic, but the other parts, I would say Islam and the traditional, which is nature that.
right, okay.
Here's my question. What I'm trying to say is, even as someone is in Islam, or that's traditional, then is that religious belief that the Ark of the Covenant is a myth? On both those other two traditions, that the Ark of the Covenant is a myth?
Yeah.
Okay.
For Christianity, the Ark of the Covenant is not a myth.
No, not to Christianity, she said to Islam.
Yeah, I was trying to get a reference for how it's so important over here, but then you telling me you didn't hear about it, it wasn't emphasized till you got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You see, to us, to those who know the history and to the Islams and to the animals, that's just one way of trying to make yourself
Okay.
up on the,
All right. Your creation, it's your creation story.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is Oromo Islam?
the majority of Oromo is Islamic. That's why the U.S. government right now, when we're asking them to help us with this question, they're not siding with us because they directly associate us with Islam and, you know, Middle East and this radicalism and so on and so on. They fear that later on this might turn around.
Why ask America to help you and not other Islamic states? And two, how big is, or if at all existent, is the Rastafarian movement in Ethiopia? Why big Ethiopia?
The first question, why are we asking the U.S.? I mean, we're not only asking the U.S., we're asking everybody. But it's known that the U.S. in this world power plays a major role. And that's why actually the government in, the Tigray government is in power because of the U.S. Help and support. And that's one reason why we had to ask, but you know, we have associations with other countries, Islam, Christian, and so on. I mean, I'm sure almost every oppressed people should relate to this question. You know, trying to have your own nation, have your own culture and language and so on. A lot of oppressed people should understand this. So we try to tell all people, but we just started with this issue. We haven't really gone too far with it. We're still working on it.
Rastafarian.
Oh yeah, the Rastafarian movement. Okay. Okay, starting with the basics, what I see on the streets. 5-10 years ago, you don't see a lot of Rasta people as in the capital city, Addis Ababa itself. You don't see a lot of them. There's one area given to them by Emperor Haile Selassie back in, I think, in the 60s or the 50s, called Shashamandi. And that's the area they live in. People from Jamaica, when they come, they pass through the capital city and they go to that area. And they do their own thing. And really, I don't know about you, but personally, I haven't encountered anybody like trying to spread the idea of the Rastafarian movement movement and so on. But I don't know, have you been opposed to anybody?
No, I think they believe that.
I mean,
Yeah, I believe he's the Messiah.
yeah.
Ooh.
The
Emperor Haile Selassie.
Emperor Haile Selassie.
Emperor of Ethiopia.
Yeah.
Coronated in 1930. They believe he was the returning Messiah. And that's
Messiah, as in Jesus.
Christ. Yes.
Yeah. You go everybody's house, you see this picture up on a.
And
What's
his
somewhere.
name was Ras Safari, was the creator. And that was what kicked off the whole movement, along with the influence of Marcus Garvey.
And this goes back to that, you know, Queen Sheba going to King Solomon and having that kid, and down the line, Haile Selassie counts as, I don't know if he's the fourth kid or fifth kid, I'm not sure about that, but he's one of the people on that line.
Since when you guys democratic?
Same question?
Since when do you guys have democracy?
Really?
I mean, multi-partisan, elections, since when exactly?
We never had elections.
You never had elections?
We never had elections.
So how's the prison?
Okay, there was Benedict II, and then it was passed to Haile Selassie. And Haile Selassie was overthrown by the student movement, and then a military government took over, which came out to 91. And in 91, the Eritreans who were fighting for their independence came in and they overthrew the Mengistu government, and they're still there.
Okay, but
They're just waiting for it.
I know in Ethiopia, you told us that there is the majority in the army are Oromo, right? And you said that the military took the power. So was it Oromo at that moment?
No, it wasn't wrong. The military that took power was saying, we're gonna associate everybody into this empire. We're gonna respect everybody's nationality and so on and so on. But at the same time, they were spreading the Amhara movement. They were using the Amharic language. Yeah, another thing I want to say on this is something which is unique compared to the other African countries. Ethiopia, doesn't have like Great Britain or Italy or the French French people come in there and create another language which everybody is gonna speak. I mean, in Senegal. Huh?
You mean they weren't colonized?
Yeah, we're colonized, and so there's no language which everybody kind of understands. So,
I just have a question. Do you personally trust the United States to help Oromo taking into consideration its imperialistic history and its avid fight against Islam and Islamic people? Do you trust the United States and African people? So do you personally trust the United States to help Oromo for its fight for independence?
personally, I've given up on the U.S. When it comes to this kind of issue. I think we have to do it by ourselves. That's the only way we can accomplish something.
Do you believe in any type of war, or are you looking right away in democracy? I mean, why not looking around multi-parties and fighting for democracy? How are you going to take your independence?
How are we gonna? Well, we tried to ask the government right now to let us participate in this, in this agenda or whatever issue they're having, and so that we can ask our own questions. But the government refused to even let us participate in any of the discussions. So we're looking. Well, there's a movement going on from Kenya and from parts of Sudan, and also from the side of Somalia. We're looking at every alternative we have, any way we can make it.
get
You
subject
mean-
to.
Philosophically, we don't recognize it.
Yeah,
but-
philosophically.
Right, okay, but politically,
It's a
their
reality.
rules are the rules that, right?
Yeah.
In the map, what area do you have a lot of natural resources in this area? Is it towards the south?
Yeah, if you look at the natural resources, it's all mainly on this part down here. The oil, the gold, and so on and so on.
That's
And the
right.
fertile land, it's all in the south.
Well, I tell you one thing, from my own experience, it's going to be tough because if you have your own independence, the rest will suffer. So the rest is feeding up from the south, and they're not going to allow you to have your independence. It's gonna be-
Yeah, there will be problems, but they're not even recognizing that, you know, they're benefiting from us. They don't even want to recognize that. They don't want to give us that appreciation. At least things are coming from our land, all the resources are from our side. They don't want to admit that. They don't want to, you know, give us that.
And another
important-
thing also, your American and British are practically work against that because you're all Muslims. They're not going to allow you to have that work.
Who, the British
The
and
British and
the U.S.? Yeah, the British and the U.S., they're against that. They're against it. But we're going to try anyway, just because they say that. I mean, that's not done with. That's what this whole movement is about, you know.
I think it's what's their influence in Ethiopia as a whole. Is there a lot of, you know, like American or European companies?
Well, when previous to 91 and up to 74, Ethiopia was a communist country. I mean, at least a socialist country. So all our relationships were with the Soviet Union. But
Like, what was their influence?
between 74 and 91, we were on the side of the Soviet Union. And previous to 55 and the beginning of African colonization, there were the British, Italians, and the French, and even the Americans had some military posts in parts of Eritrea, which dates back to prior to 55.
So,
And right now, I think mostly is with the U.S. and Great Britain, because the government system is actually where the prime minister is, you know, the highest position. Even though you would have a president, but the president would be the puppet, but the prime minister makes the decision, which is the British parliament system. So we
all
have,
under the bridge.
yeah, we've adopted the British government system.
What's the source of revenue?
The source of
Is it
revenue,
like exports?
yeah, exports,
Right,
number one,
exports.
coffee.
Okay.
Coffee is the number one revenue generator, which grows mostly in the land of Oromia. So, and other source of revenue are just livestock, animal skins.
And that's the government's major source of revenue, the cotton?
Yeah, that's the number one.
Well, first of all, I mean, I have no issue with like, succession based on, ethnicity. My question is, do you think that the situation here is irreparable between the Oromia and Amhara? Because for a couple of reasons. First of all, in Africa, like it was never one big, unified continent or whatever, and it may never be as far as like just a unified culture or what have you. But one thing we do have in common, if not anything else, is we have a common enemy, and that's the West. And as we fight amongst each other, I mean, this is everywhere, from here fight amongst each other. The West is steady scrapping up our resources and moving them out. So, you know, as I'm asking is irreparable because it would be cool, you know, the relations of that country right now to get straight. I mean, you have to succeed, or what have you, but, you know, it still needs to be some type of open dialogue there. I would think, you know, so that the common enemy can be addressed, and because as long as they know that you know there's beef between the North and the South, they're gonna use it against them. And you know you got the ones down here, and you know Ethiopia adopted the British form of government. I mean, you know, ship arms over there. You know, I mean, cause conflict, and there's gonna be conflict while they're steady taking all the coffee and the gold and stuff, and utilize it in the West.
Yeah, you see, you're seeing the big picture, the big enemy. But people in Africa, I mean, we're too busy, you know, just fighting among each other. We don't see this big picture.
It's here
But-
too. It's here. I mean, I'm sorry to touch you, but it's everywhere. That's everywhere where black people are.
Yeah, but, you know, we have to understand also, we have to compromise, you know, within Ethiopia itself. We have to make the compromise here. I mean, we got the majority, you know, we got, you know, we're not going to continue being told by the Amharas their language, their culture. We're not going to, I mean, they have to respect us.
Yeah, I understand that much. But
If we can reach that understanding, then I think it will be repairable. What I see is once we reach, you know, once we identify ourselves, once we know who we are, I think we'll reach to that level, just like Europe, and start expanding, trying to create this unity. I think the main problem with Africa right now is, you know, all those individual groups, they're not given a chance. They're not developing. That's the only way we can think outside is once we develop inside, and then we can start incorporating things. So I think
And I would just like to say we have a lot in common. Everything is based upon a white privilege. The problems that they have, I didn't make the meeting, but I just like to explain the white privilege. That is a problem. If the minority group can't help that Caucasian American first, a European American first, it's not needed. But if there's a way that they can benefit off the idea, like whatever you were talking about, if they can benefit first, they'll use you. But if they can't benefit and you're going to gain some power, they're not going to. So the minorities are just like listed downward. Whoever can help them first. And that's how they're doing things. But we have a lot in common. We have a lot in common. Any person with darker skin has a lot in common with most of the time.
I just wanted for clarification purposes, if you can explain the relationship between, or the difference, if there is one, between the relationship in the Roma, and the Amhara, and the Roma and the Tigray. And Tigray is, I guess, supported back by the U.S., but where's Amhara fitting?
Amhara fits in up to 91 from the beginning of time, almost, not really from the beginning, but somewhere, you know, it goes at least 300 years, 200 years, up to 91. It was, but still it's Amhara. That's the dominant culture. That's the culture which is being spread up to this point. I mean, that's the national language, even though they're not the majority. And the holidays and the music, and even you can see it on the radio stations where they give the Amhara 8-9 hours of radio hours, and they give the Oromos only 2 hours. I mean, this is very hard for, you know, people from here to understand, where you got radio stations everywhere. You know, this is very limited. I think it's because it's expensive to maintain, but they only give like 2 hours for the Tigray and for the Amhara. This is before 91, and they would give like 9-10 hours for the Amhara.
So is the official language Tigray or
Amhara is the official.
Where is most of the alumni?
In the Amhara.
So the Tigray are involved?
They are, I mean, they just came in right now. They haven't spread their, you know, their culture and
Oh,
their language
okay.
yet. They just came in,
found.
yeah, they just came in about 91, yeah, 91.
Okay.
So they've started to teach their kids in their own language and trying to change the school system. And also tell them that, you know, the Ethiopian Empire didn't go back to 3000 and, you know, tell them all this, the truth. They've started doing it.
The problem with most African countries is they rely so much on the Western help, and what I think that's a mistake, because what they don't get is even if they help at some extent, they will want something in return, and it's going to keep us at the same level of dependency. So it's just an illusion. I think what we need to do is try to solve our problems, because as long as we're asking for help, be it to Americans, be it to friends or wherever, we are still going to be in debt. We are going to be oppressed. We are going to have our resources taken away from us, and we are going to end at the same point. So, and if you think they are going to help us develop, they are not, because it's not in their interest to help us develop, or it's not going to work. We need to do our own thing together first before trying to do anything else, because otherwise it's just not work.
Yeah, this is what happened between Ethiopia and Eritrea. Ethiopia was being backed by the U.S. and look where they are now. There's a fight going on between Ethiopia and Eritrea. I don't know if anybody's aware of this. So, I mean, for them, it's just a matter of selling their weapons. That's Eritrea and Ethiopia. 93. Look at this. They want to expand already after getting their independence in 93. Now they want to expand southwards. So, I mean, that's where the main issue is. Somewhere along here, there's a 400 miles land. And that's what the fight is all about. But it's going deep into the capital of Eritrea, and it's going deep into
How
parts of Ethiopia.
did Eritrea get it? Well, they were backed by a European power,
Okay, the history behind Eritrea is
the Italians.
the Italians, yeah, in 1945, Minili gave Eritrea, and he said, okay, I have to keep the rest. And from that point on, they felt like, you know, they have their own culture and they have their own identity. But I mean, that's what it's based on.
Is there anything common between Hebrew and Eritrea?
Actually, they speak the same language. Tigray and Eritrea.
So, these boundaries, these are all boundaries that the indigenous people made, or is this being imposed? I'm talking about just in what we call Ethiopia.
Oh, the whole thing. Actually, this whole line is made by, you know, the Berlin Conference, the Scramble for Africa. Prior to that, everybody had their own little thing. I mean, occasionally there's a cattle raid going between two villages or two societies and so on. But there was no boundary like Sudan and stuff like that.
So I'm not clear.
Yeah.
In 1945?
No, I mean, yeah,
At the conference.
at the
At
conference.
the conference, it
It
was
was
given, and that's why they had that fight later on.
Yeah,
And then what happened in 1945?
that's when Italy got defeated by Ethiopia, and Ethiopia took Eritrea back.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah, that's something I should make clear. Yeah, 18, during the conference, they were given to Italy and then returned back in 45. All right. Well, that's it. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the youth of South Africa, I was in Zimbabwe last year and also in Soweto. And the year before I was in Senegal, and the year before I was in Central Africa, Gabon, and the year before I was in Abidjan, the Ivory Coast.
A person who defines himself or herself as a racist, anti-racist is probably better off in dealing with their racism than a white person that will come up to you and say, well, I donated money for the NAACP in 1955, you know, and I marched in all the marches. I'm not a racist. Anytime a white person tells you they're not a racist, that means they've not dealt with their racism. That's what it means. Anytime a man tells you, a woman, he's not a sexist, that means he's not dealt with his sexism. Because if I'm not a sexist, you will know. So will she. My deeds will show that I'm not a sexist. She doesn't have to be told, or she doesn't have to be told I'm not a sexist. So white people that we know are brothers or sisters, because they're clearing out their racism, will show it by their deeds. You don't have to tell people what you are. That's basically a manipulation game with language to get into our head. In any event, organic patriotism, what does that mean? That means we love everything that's African. In other words, we love our Africanness, we study our Africanness. We also develop African interests, whether it is in Africa or here. First of all, I want people to say, I want to be business people. That's fine. You want to be business people? I'm not into business. That's cool. But even if you're studying business, recognize that business could be pro-African or anti-African. So what kind of business? If you're coming to me and saying, give me support, I'm a black business person, and you're opening a liquor store, and that will be the 100th liquor store in my community, don't expect me to get excited. Because my community does not liquor stores, does not need liquor stores. If you're selling crack, and that's your business, as they would say on the street, that's my business, I'm taking over business. If you want to take care of that business, get your black ass out of my face, you know. And I wouldn't even call you black because you're not black, you're poison. And you're a poison peddler. So don't come and tell me. So we need to know what we mean by business. I'm not against business. We need to develop self-sustaining business. Africa needs to, first of all, learn to grow food. The World Bank is not going to let us do it. They want us to grow coffee because they want to rip us off. We need to grow food. We need to feed ourselves. We have to be self-sufficient, not to become another imperial power, because we can't be. There are only few imperial powers in the world. We need to become self-sufficient. Food is independence. So self-sufficient African development. Political development that's loving and open. We need to stop. One of the things I want to do on the African continent is we should have a moratorium on weapons. See, that's what is happening. We cannot even have an African dialogue anymore because, let's say, she belongs to one group or one ethnic group or one community and I belong to another. Rather than sitting down and talking, the CIA will arm her group to the teeth with the latest weapons. So, do you think if they have weapons and we don't, they're going to sit down and talk to us? No! Because the weapon creates the incentive for killing. See, so the imbalance, there's a political disequilibrium in Africa. The political disequilibrium has been created by the CIA. That disequilibrium is what certain groups are picked by the United States, by France, by Germany, by England, to be armed to the teeth. Certain groups, certain communities. And those people that have been armed to the teeth are not sitting down and going to dialogue with the people that don't have arms. Because they will use those arms to impose their will. So you have ethnic groups imposing their will on other ethnic groups all over Africa. And basically replicating the same supremacist, the same colonial stuff. Who wins in the final analysis? The colonialists. Do you know that there is a serious discussion in the political, I'm a political scientist by virtue, or misvirtue, whatever way you want to look at it. Do you know in the political science literature, there is a discussion, a serious discussion by European intellectuals about recolonizing Africa, because Africa cannot take care of itself. That's the kind of sad situation we are in right now. So anyway, let's develop organic identity. Can anybody help me plug this? I want to play one music and we'll call it a day. If you can plug my CD player. And as you're plugging it, as you can find out, you can take that plug off now because I'm done with whatever. I'm going to sing a song for you if I can. I'm going to try. Some of the freedom fighters that I knew, some of whom were my relatives, who were fighting against the military dictatorship that got overthrown in 1991, used to sing this song. This song basically is about freedom. For many, many years we fought against oppression, and we continue to fight against oppression, and if we are united, we're going to be victorious. In my language, not the Ethiopian language, because there are many languages, one of the many languages, which is Amharic, and I'm going to sing that song. And I want this to be clear. It's not the entire Ethiopian language, one language, but many people in Ethiopia speak it. Okay, Amharic. The name of, it's about freedom, as I said. Freedom is will come, but we have to be united. Before you go, I'm going to play another song and we'll be done. But what the song basically means is that irrespective of how many years of struggle, whether we struggle, however long the struggle takes, we will win in the final analysis to destroy the multiple pillars of oppression. And it was the guerrilla, the freedom fighters who were fighting against the dictatorship in Ethiopia used to sing it as guerrilla fighters, many of them are my relatives. Call the second. Let me just, one more song. This is about the soul. Liberation is about the soul, detoxification of the soul. So I want to play one song and you can go. Please, just bear with me. I've had you up to now. I've been playing with you up to now, so come on. Hey! I got soul. Where I come from, they do this. Yeah, soul power. Soul power. What did he say? Soul power. Soul power. Come on. Out with the poison, in with the soul. Let me hear you say it. Out with the poison, in with the soul. 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 Let me hear you one more. Out with the poison, in with the soul. Out with the poison, in with the soul. Out with the poison, in with the soul.
I got the name. I not gonna actually step up.
Have you ever met
Chad?
Is he European or American or? Oh, is he? But I love it. Is this still on?
Yeah, it's still on. You glad you came?
Yeah.
Say it for the people. Are you glad you came?
Oh, I loved it.
For the record.
It was a nice experience. The landscape.
I greet you all in the colloquial phrase from the brothers and sisters on the block. What's up? Why don't you all just stand to your feet just for a minute? One, just stand up. So many times when you eat, food cuts down on your oxygen. And that's what induces the spirit of sleep and slumber. And I did not want to come in here and try and talk to people that's kind of sleepy. Now just go on and stretch if you need to stretch, amen? All right, then do one other thing to me. Look at someone that's next to you. Just look at them and repeat after me. Say, my brother or my sister, I don't know how your week has been, but I have decided to say, hallelujah, anyhow. I'm not going to let my troubles get me down. If Satan blocks my way, I'll stand right up and say, church choir. top and turn me up just a couple more notches. Since you don't have a monitor, I'm an old country black preacher and I need to hear myself. Amen. Thank you so much. There you go. Take the love of God. My friends, those of you who have been here throughout the years, you know that on last year we lost a great, great friend of mine and yours in the person of Margaret Anita Gay Hawthorne. How many of you all knew Anita? Thank you. Thank you so much. So there you go. Thank you so much. Those of you who did not have the opportunity to know Anita, I want you to know that her spirit is all over this place. And I can't help but think about her during this hour. And there is something that she always asked me to do wherever I saw her. And in her spirit, I do that for her. Why should I feel discouraged? And why do the shadows fall? Why does my heart feel so lonely? And it longs for heaven and home. When Jesus is my portion, a constant friend is He. His is on the sparrow, and I know He watches over me. I sing because I am God for all that He has done. Let me say a couple of things before I get into this little feeble thought. Many, many times when black folk see other black folk being involved and emotional in their praise to the Lord, oftentimes they feel that all that is just ignorance, and it don't take all of that to move around and do this, that, or the other. And since we're in a place of education, let me share this with you. That whenever you see us moving around, it's not just because we are emotional, but our emotion is rooted, grounded, platformed, and pinnacled, and perched from a premise of intellect. We have come to a place in life where we realize and we know that if it had not been for God on our side, we don't know where we would be. Now, my friends, certainly you nor I have enough economic prowess to pay God for His blessings. So what can we give Him other than praise? After all, these hands are His, these feet are His, this mouth is His, and if we cannot use them to lift Him up. And then did not Jesus Himself say, and if I be lifted up from the earth, I'll draw all men unto me. Now listen, if the church of God, if the church that is supposed to represent Jesus Christ, fail to lift Jesus up, you need to understand the consequences of that. For Jesus says, if I be lifted up from the earth, I'm going to draw, which suggests that when the people of God choose to praise Him, there is a spiritual magnetism that emits from His divine pores, and it reaches out to each and every one of you who needs something special from God. Let me move this thing. Get this thing out. Yeah, move it right. Get on down. That's better. If it ain't the way I got to have it, I just have to change things around and feel a little more comfortable. So I wanted to say that. Then let me also say this in reference to something that took place on last night. Now, I know many of you were there, and I echo the sentiments of my contemporary Spike, that while I certainly apologize for some of you who may have not understood what exactly was going on, but I do not apologize for standing up and standing for what I believe in. Let me say this to you. I'm not remotely concerned about Dr. Lenora Fulani. Let me be clear on that. Two things happened on yesterday that caused me concern since I've been here. One, I was sitting in on a session and Dr. Reynolds made the comment, and I knew he didn't mean it in the way it was spoken, but I felt I needed to clarify it. His words, he said that the only good preachers he knew were poor preachers, and those who had a little something. Let me say this to you, my friends. I pray for the day that the church understand that just because you poor don't make you holy. I don't teach that in New Salem. Matter of fact, if you are around me and you are poor, I'm not going to be content until you get up out of your poverty. So then I get here on last night, and then I hear Fulani talking about a good friend of mine, Dr. Randolph Statton. And I've made a pact with him as well as many others. If you kicking it like that, I'm going to stand up and say something. Because see, what bothers me a lot of times is some of you will sometimes have friends and other folk can bring you junk about your friends and you don't stand on them, folks. Now there's something else interesting that took place in that little speech she gave last night. Is it not amazing that she spent most of her time bashing and beating up black leadership, and many of them are men, and the only two men that she spoke good about was Jesse Ventura and Tim Penny, and they white? Sometimes you got to listen real close what people are saying, and then you will insult our intelligence as if we don't know what's going on in this state. You all might not have heard Jesse before he became governor. And then you all might not know about Tim Penny. How many of you have heard about the American Experiment? The American Experiment is a conservative think tank. And who they're thinking on most of the time is you and I. Last year they had Ward Connolly in town to try to help them devise a plan to eradicate affirmative action. Matter of fact, one of the founders of the American experiment, a gentleman by the name of Mitch Pearlstein, said on a television program we was at one day in reference to colored folk that, in essence, we are not moral. And this is the man who brought her here last night. And she introduced him to you all, and y'all clapped. But I don't hold that against you, because it's my job to kick it with you on the reel and give you the rest of the pieces of the puzzle. And not be ashamed, not be scared, and not bow down, and not think about what some of y'all don't think about me. So if it offended you, you have my apologies for that, but I say this to you, don't put me into the position where I got to react when you talk that trash. Because I ain't taking no L's and no shorts, and I hope you don't either. It's about time when black folk and those who want to roll with us begin to stand up and be men and women and not bow down to anybody who brings us noise. Now, that ain't what I want to talk about, but it's free. And I'm not gonna be long, so don't y'all worry about that, because I'm about tired of y'all, y'all tired of me. But there are some words that I wanted to lift, because I'm very, very serious about uplifting and trying to build and to motivate our people. And in the place in which we find ourselves tonight, many of you are freshmen, some of you are in grad school. And the thing that disturbed me most, do you not know that at any particular point in history, as an African American people, we are more educated than we have ever been when it comes to academia. But yet we are more fragmented than we have ever been. Something's wrong with that. And as I was thinking about this and I was rolling through the Rolodex of my mind, trying to find something that would be good and just and right and fitting in this kind of a place, the Spirit of God arrested my mind and handcuffed my cognitive abilities and placed me in a salvific solitary confinement and forced me to look at this text in a very special kind of way to see if there was something in here that we could glean out, that maybe with the hope and the prayer that when you leave here tonight that you will be better than when you came in, that you would have a new fervor, a new vitality, that a spirit of kinship would rise up and well up on the inside of you, where you will recognize and realize that you are somebody not because of the pigmentation of your skin, not because of what you own, but because of whose you are, knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt that it is God that made you, it is God that shaped you, it is God that brought you, it is God that taught you, and no one else other than God had any business defining you. Because they did not make you. So I know you didn't bring your Bible, but I brought mine, so I want to read this little scripture to you. Will y'all give me a minute to do that? From Esther, the 2nd chapter, and the 20th verse, you'll find these words. Esther had not yet showed her kindred, nor her people, as Mordecai had charged her. For Esther did the commandment of Mordecai like as when she was brought up. Then, where's the last one? Verse number 14 out of the 4th chapter of Esther. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? And that's what I want to talk about. For such a time as this. The setting of our story, we find that there is a Jew by the name of Mordecai, who was the uncle of a queen by the name of Esther. Esther was married to a king who ruled from India to Ethiopia by the name of Ahasuerus. Now, my friends, this is Black History Month, and all month long I've been lecturing at the church on what color was Jesus. We're showing and tracing his genealogical lines back to Africa, but I don't want to talk about that tonight. But I just do want you to know and remember that Ahasuerus, who was the king at that time, ruled from India to Ethiopia, and you know who's in India and Ethiopia and what they look like. Now, it's interesting because one day, Ahasuerus, and I'm going to be giving this from McAfee's perspective. I tell the folk at the church, I'm not a theologian, I'm a ghetologian, so just stay with me for a minute. Ahasuerus was having a party at his house, right? So he invited all of his boys to his crib, and they was kicking it on the reel. So after they got inebriated a little bit, you know, they got juiced up a little bit, and they got to talking about women as men will do. Because women, you need to know that even when you're not around us, when we are together as men and we just kicking it on the rizzo, we talking about y'all. So the conversation, so the conversation rolled around to Ahasuerus' wife, and her name was Vashti, and the Bible says Vashti was fair, but we would interpret it as Vashti was fine. So Vashti was so fine that Ahasuerus said, look, man, y'all think y'all got a woman, y'all got to see my girl. So he told one of his chamberlains, he said, look, man, go tell Vashti, I said, come over here because I want my homies to check her out. So when the word got over there to her, Vashti said, man, I ain't going over there. Ain't going to be showing me off like that. So Ahasuerus got an attitude because he felt like Vashti had fronted him off. Well, now, the man who was sitting around, stay with me now, because I'm going somewhere. So the man who was in the camp, who was kicking it with Ahasuerus, said, now look, man, you got to put a check on Vashti, because if the other sisters and our wives find out what Vashti have done, they're going to be kicking the same kind of drama in our flat as Vashti kicking in yours. If you don't know what I said, let me translate it. If you don't get Vashti straight, the same problems that you're having right now in your house, we're going to experience in ours. That's all I said. So then, as a result of that, she does not come. So Ahasuerus turns around and they sign a decree, and they basically just kick Vashti to the curb. So time rolls on, and old boy's heart gets to playing on him, right? Now, his girl is gone. Bam! Gone out of here. So his buddy said, now I'll tell you what you need to do, Ahasuerus. Why don't you look for all of the fair young virgins around and pick you another woman out? He said, well, that's cool. So we're going to call for all of the women to come in. And to make a long story short, because it's interesting, because this Jewish girl by the name of Esther comes in and captures his eye. Now, y'all, I don't know what she looked like because the text don't say what she looked like, but I can't use my imagination because I am a man and I do know what attracts a man's eye. But I won't talk about that. So she comes in. Now it's interesting because her uncle Mordecai had prepared her for this day. But the only thing Mordecai told her was, you ain't gonna bow. Mordecai ain't gonna bow. Haman gets instantly mad, and because of his position, he manipulates the king to sign a decree to kill all of the Jews. And when the word got out that they was going to kill all the Jews, because Haman understood that just killing Mordecai wasn't enough. Because more than likely, whatever Mordecai was standing upon was running on the inside of the veins of many of the other Jews, and they would eventually not bow as well. So he decided to try and kill them all. Well, the word got out in the camp, and the Jews began to mourn and to fast. And Uncle Mordecai had came, and he would stand out in front of the king's palace in sackcloth and ashes, which he could be killed for that. And the word got to his niece Esther that, girl, your uncle is tripping out on the block. The boy done lost his mind. He's sitting in sackcloth and ashes. He know he can get killed. So she sent someone out to find out what the problem was. And he told them what the problem was. And he told Esther, he said, now Esther, what I need you to do, I need you to go into the king and tell the king who you really are and what nationality you are. And Esther turned around and said to him, I can't go in. Because if I go in and the king don't pass me the scepter, then I can die. And Mordecai basically sent back to her and told her, maybe you have been chosen for such a time as this. What does that mean to you and to I? First of all of the Hamans of the world is not there. You need to understand that there is a mass movement going on in this country, basically to kill out black folk. Now let me share this with you, because when I utilize the term kill, I don't always mean a literal killing, but many times they can kill us out mentally and spiritually. You don't hear me? And if you don't see it by now, then you've obviously been having your head in the sand, because you've been living in the king's house and you don't understand the plight of your own people. But my question that I want to raise with you also tonight is, why did Mordecai tell Esther in the first place, don't reveal who you are? What is it that's so bad about being black and who you are? I understand that in corporate America, you cannot always talk the exact same way you talk with your friends at home and on the block, but when you get home, you at least ought to pull off the facade. You don't hear me. And what frightens me today with many of our kids that's in institutes of higher learning, we have historical amnesia. We try to do everything to forget who we are and where we came from. Many of you in here tonight, you're just going to school to get a job, to work for somebody. God ain't called you just to work for somebody. He done called you to own the company. But your mindset is just being comfortable with belonging, because everything in society, they made it bad that if it's black, it ain't any good, and you feel that way, and you feel so bad about yourself, you don't even want to be black anymore, so you change your eye color, you change the texture of your hair, you change the way you speak. You can't say amen, say out. So many different things that is so vital to our success and vital to our survival. We've thrown it away. But look now, she learned that from her own uncle, which means the authority figure in her life led her down the wrong path. I've got 3 kids, and my boys in particular, I've taught them from the time they were yay-high, from the time before they could talk, that there's something special in God's eyesight. And they never have to be ashamed of who they are. I tell them, boy, I'm your daddy, Jerry McAfee. Your grandpa is Fletcher McAfee. Your great-grandpa is Henry McAfee. And your great-great-grandpa is Jim McAfee, who was a lumberman in Mississippi who was not a slave. And when he died, he left everything to your great-grandpa, Henry McAfee, who never was a slave, who married Alberta McIntosh. They had 14 kids, of which my father was born. They never bowed down to anyone. Matter of fact, they wound up in Michigan because they fought from Mississippi to Arkansas to Missouri, because they had a standard of living that they would never bow down to anybody during those times. I tell my boys what my daddy told me, that when he was a little child, they had to can all of their food. And grandma would always, and I said grandma, I didn't say grandmother, because in my culture we said grandma. They was canning peaches, and an overseer, white overseer, came to their house and took the peaches and began to eat them. And daddy ran off to get grandpa from the field. And grandpa comes home and sees the white man eating his peaches, and he gets his shotgun and throw down on him and says, all right, give him up. He marched him all the way into town. You got to understand, y'all, this is in the early 1900s. Here's a black man with a shotgun marching a white overseer into town about some peaches. And when they get to the sheriff's office, the sheriff said, Henry, a good way for a nigga to get killed is marching a white man with a shotgun. And my grandpa told him, yeah, for a good way for a white man to get killed is messing with a nigger's peaches. Why did I say that? I said that because one must understand that we've got to begin to train the mindset of our kids that they are special. And whether they are in the king's house or the outhouse, they understand that they have intrinsic value in the eyesight of God. And so many times you've got to understand, you've got to make some choices in your life that it might cost you your very life. But God has not planted you on this earth to live forever. There's some things you've got to be willing to die for. Esther had to make the decision. And as I get ready to go to my seat, what I need to know tonight, what kind of decision are you going to make? Maybe this is your time. Many of you are looking for another Martin Luther King, for another Malcolm X, but maybe that same spirit that rests in a bowl on the inside of them is living on the inside of you. But will you have the courage to stand? Because many of us are afraid to die. And let me understand, let you understand this, that if you are afraid to die, then you've never really lived. Because if you continue to take the stuff that's given to you, we will never make it as a people. All of you, be a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, or even in grad school, that spirit is on the inside of you, and we need you to stand and stand tall, because this is the time right now. Not tomorrow, not yesteryear, right? So will you take the challenge? Or will you walk with your head bowed down, not realizing who you are and whose you are? Or will you stand up and be counted? I tell you what I made up in my mind to do. I decided that I'm going to be a man. Whether the ship sink or sail, I'm going to be a man. I'm not going to bow down. I'm not going to kowtow. I'm not going to do that. And if it's wrong, I'm going to speak up on it. And whether you like it or not, that's on you. Somebody got to stand up. And all of these campuses that you all are from Marshall and Morris and Mankato and St. Thomas, you've got to have a clear and concise voice and clear and concise convictions that you're not going to stop. Because the young kids is looking up to you. They're looking up to you. God bless you.
See y'all later, yeah. Y'all don't get no seat? I'll let you.
And begin the 23rd Annual Pan-Afrikan Student Leadership Conference's talent ceremony. We are starting this evening with first step, education is our goal. Drum roll, please welcome.
have the Africanism in them and with them. If you dad, oh, thank you. I want everybody here to do like this. Did you hear that? I'm going to try it again. I'm going to get my magic stick here. Stand up, stand up. Stand up on your side. Stand up with your hands. Let's get ready. John, let's go. Come on, man. Come on, let's bring it. Can I act like at the home over in Africa? The drums have significant meaning. Tonight's piece is dedicated to Miss Anita Gay, my sister who got called home to glory, but was a part of Pan-Africanism. Put your hands together for Sister Gay. I can tell you a story tonight about Pan-Africanism, because I'm black and I live in America. You want this? Catch. Oh, boy, you bad. You might can play a drum a little bit. Catch that too bad. Woo, give him some. Dr. Fagan, this one is for you, my beautiful sister. You ain't got nothing to worry about. We got about 2 or 3 nickels in the bank. You don't have nothing to worry about me here. Everything. If you had a rough time getting here, put your hands together. Somebody tried to stop you. Come on now. We're going to dance while the true story of this is Dr. Fagan told us to say that the beat must go on. Pan-Africanism must live on. It will live on through each one of you, to the president, to all the students here at Mankato State. Come on, help me out, Mankato State. Mankato State. So we lead Pan-Africanism. How many years, doctor? How many? 23, put your hands together for I feel it now. Let's go. Yes, don't feel good and everything. Here, brothers and first and some college students, give them some. Give them some. We are all shapes and sizes. To Dr. Fagan and everyone, before we go, we're going to do a little freelance thing we call just doing it. And that's what I want to ask each one of you to do till next year, that I see you, and you. Invite our Pan-African king and queen, invite them to your campus. Invite us, spread black love wherever you go, red, yellow, black, and white. To my brother Travis, to all my brothers that came up from the city, to Miss Jackson, who made the youth conference what it is. We just want to say thank you. Give Tina some. She's right. That's one of my students. Let's get out here to everybody here. We love you. Put your hands together for yourself. See you next year, guys.